The Council's Dilemma Commander Jae-Sung Baek moved silently through the darkness of space. His ship was small, designed for stealth rather than combat. Behind him, 9 more ships followed in perfect formation. They had been traveling for 6 days deep into Council territory, and now they approached their target. Reading the supply depot ahead, his pilot whispered, though there was no need for quiet in the vacuum of space. Old habits died hard. Any patrol ships? Jae-Sung asked. 2 light cruisers. They are not expecting trouble. Of course they were not. The Council had never been attacked in their own territory. They had grown comfortable, lazy even. That was about to change. Teams 2 and 3 take the cruisers. Everyone else with me. We hit the depot hard and fast. The attack lasted 7 minutes. The patrol cruisers were disabled before they could send a distress signal. The supply depot, which contained fuel and ammunition for the Council fleet, erupted in a series of explosions. Jae-Sung's team was gone before reinforcements could arrive, vanishing into the black. It was the 4th such raid in 8 days. Across Council space, human special operations teams were conducting strikes that seemed impossible. They attacked supply lines, destroyed communications relays, and generally made the Council forces nervous. On the Council station, the emergency session was not going well. We have lost 6 major supply depots, one counselor reported. Our fleet movements are being disrupted because we cannot guarantee fuel availability. How are they doing this? Another demanded. How do they know where to strike? They are learning, Myrthos said quietly. They watch our patterns. They identify our weaknesses, and they exploit them with precision. Vexithera looked exhausted. The war she had expected to end in days had dragged on for 2 months. 3 more major battles had been fought, and while the Council won 2 of them, the victories came at terrible cost. Human forces fought with a desperation and creativity that the Council could not match. We have committed 800 ships to this war, General Talvin said. We have lost over 300. The humans have lost perhaps 80, but they keep fighting, because they have nowhere else to go, Myrthos explained. We fight to enforce our will. They fight for survival. The motivation is not equal. Ambassador Jiwon Park had requested a meeting with the Council. She now stood before them, her face calm but her eyes hard. The Council is invited to discuss terms for ending this conflict, she said formally. You wish to surrender? Vexithara asked hopefully. No. We wish to offer you a chance to withdraw with honor. You have learned that we will not be easily conquered. Continue this war and more will die on both sides. For what, pride? Territorial control? Is it worth the blood being spilled? You dare lecture us? General Thalvin said angrily. You who started this by violating our restrictions? We colonized empty worlds, Jiwon replied. We harmed no one. You declared war because you feared our growth. Well, now you see what happens when you threaten humans. We fight back, and we will continue fighting until you leave us alone. The session dissolved into argument. Some counselors wanted to accept the human offer and end the war. Others insisted that stopping now would show weakness. The Council was fracturing. Over the next weeks, 2 Council species secretly opened negotiations with humanity. They saw the writing on the wall. The humans might eventually lose through sheer attrition, but the cost would destroy the Council's military power. Better to make peace now. Admiral Choi received reports of the secret negotiations with satisfaction. The Council is splitting. Good, keep the pressure on. Colonel Kang, increase the raids. I want them afraid to resupply their fleets. Admiral, intelligence reports the Council is preparing something big, her aide said. They have recalled ships from across the galaxy. How many? Over 2,000 vessels, and there are rumors of a superweapon. Bora considered this. A superweapon. Something they have been hiding. Something they hope will end this war quickly. Should we be worried? Always worry, Bora said. But also prepare. If they have a superweapon, we need to find its weakness. Get me everything we can learn about Council experimental weapons programs. On the Council station, Vexithara made a decision. Deploy the star render. The chamber fell silent. Even General Thalvin looked shocked. High Counselor, that weapon has not been used in over 3,000 years, Myrthos said. It was built to deter conflicts, not to fight them. The humans must be stopped, Vexithara insisted. We have tried conventional warfare. They are too resourceful, too determined. The star render will show them that resistance is futile. It is a planet killer, Myrthos protested. Are you truly willing to destroy inhabited worlds? I am willing to do whatever is necessary to preserve the Council's authority. The Star Render was a massive space station, built centuries ago using technology that the current Council barely understood. It could focus stellar energy into a beam, powerful enough to crack a planet's surface. It had been used once, long ago, to destroy an uninhabited world as a demonstration. The threat of its use had kept peace for millennia. Now Vexithera was preparing to use it against humans. Word of the weapon's deployment reached human intelligence within days. Admiral Choi called an emergency meeting of her senior staff. A planet killer, she said, studying the limited information they had. They are escalating to total war. Can we stop it? Someone asked. I do not know, but we will try. Dr. Haewon Choi, I need you to analyze everything we know about this weapon. Find me a weakness. Dr. Haewon was a physicist, unrelated to the Admiral despite sharing a surname. She had been studying Council technology since the war began. Now she dove into the problem of the Star Render with intensity. Meanwhile, Captain Dae-hyun Kim was given command of a new ship, the Indomitable. It was the largest vessel in the human fleet, built in secret over the past year. It carried the most advanced weapons and defenses humanity could produce. Your mission will be revealed when the time comes, Admiral Choi told him. But know this, everything depends on you and your crew. Dae-hyun accepted the responsibility without hesitation. We will not fail. As the Council massed its forces for a final decisive battle, humanity prepared its own response. They had won battles through cunning and courage. Now they would face the full might of the Council, backed by ancient technology designed to inspire terror. But humans had faced terror before. They had stared into the abyss of nuclear warfare and stepped back. They had survived plagues and disasters and their own worst impulses. They knew fear, yes, but they also knew how to push through it. Admiral Choi stood in the command center, watching the tactical displays. The Council was moving 2,000 ships into position. The Star Render was being towed to the battle zone. In 2 weeks, the decisive engagement would begin. Admiral, we are outnumbered more than 2 to 1, her aide said quietly. I know. Can we win? Bora smiled. That depends on your definition of winning. Can we destroy their entire fleet? Probably not. Can we hurt them badly enough that they regret starting this war? Yes. Can we protect our colonies? That is what we will fight for. She opened a channel to all human forces. This is Admiral Choi. The Council is coming with everything they have. They think their numbers will overwhelm us. They think their superweapon will break our spirit. They are wrong. We are humans. We have faced extinction and survived. We will face this threat the same way. With courage, with intelligence, and with absolute refusal to surrender. All forces prepare for battle. Let us show them what humanity can do. Across human space, thousands of men and women prepared for the fight of their lives. They knew the odds. They knew the risks. But they also knew something the Council did not understand. Humans were at their most dangerous when backed into a corner. The breaking point, the Arcturus expanse, was empty space far from any inhabited world. Admiral Bora Choi had chosen it carefully as the location for humanity's final stand. If they lost here, the war was over. If they won, the Council would have no choice but to negotiate peace. She stood on the bridge of the Indomitable, watching the fleet assemble. 800 human ships, every vessel they could gather. Some were military craft, sleek and deadly. Others were armed civilian ships, merchants and miners who had volunteered to fight. Against them would come over 2,000 Council vessels, plus the Star Render. Captain Dae-hyun Kim approached her. The fleet is in position, Admiral. All captains report ready. And the Star Render? Dr. Haewon believes she has found its weakness. We will know soon if she is correct, Bora nodded. Then we proceed as planned. The Council thinks they are coming to crush us. Instead, they are walking into the most carefully planned ambush in human history. High Counselor Vexithera stood on the command deck of the Star Render, watching her massive fleet arrange itself in battle formation. This was it. The final battle. The humans would be destroyed, and the Council's authority would be restored. The weapon is charging, a technician reported. Full power in 72 hours, 3 days to build up enough stellar energy to fire. Then one shot would destroy the human colony at New Terra, demonstrating the futility of resistance. After that, the humans would surrender or be systematically eliminated. All ships advance, Vexithera ordered. Engage the human fleet and drive them back. The star render must be protected while it charges. The Council Armada surged forward, 2,000 ships moving in perfect coordination, a wall of metal and energy that seemed unstoppable. And then the humans did something unexpected. They retreated, they run, General Talvin said with satisfaction. Chase them down. But Admiral Choi was not running. She was executing the oldest strategy in human warfare, the tactical retreat. Her ships pulled back in organized groups, firing as they went, making the Council forces commit to pursuit. She drew them deeper into the Arcturus expanse, away from their support structures, away from their supply lines, and toward the trap. Now, Choi ordered. From hiding places among the asteroids and behind small moons, human forces appeared. Not just ships, but weapons platforms, missile batteries, and hundreds of fighter craft. The Council fleet suddenly found itself surrounded. All forces engage at will, Choi commanded. Hit them from every angle. Give them no time to think. The space around Arcturus exploded with violence. Human fighters swarmed the Council ships like angry insects. The armed civilian vessels, less powerful than military craft, used ramming tactics and suicide drones. Every human ship fought with desperate intensity, but the numbers were still against them. The Council forces began to push back, their superior firepower taking a toll. Human ships died, their crews fighting to the last breath. On the star render, Vexithara watched the battle with growing concern. The humans were fighting harder than expected, but they could not win. In 60 hours, the weapon would fire, and this would be over. Captain Yeon-Soo Han led her fighter squadron through the chaos. She had survived the battle at Helios and 4 more engagements since. She knew what needed to be done. Ghost Squadron, we are going for the star render. Follow my lead. Her fighters broke away from the main battle, accelerating toward the massive space station. Council defenders moved to intercept, but Ghost Squadron had practiced this maneuver 100 times. They weaved through enemy fire with skill born of desperation. Launching breaching pods, Yeon-Soo transmitted. Small craft, barely more than armored shuttles, launched from her fighters. They contained boarding teams led by Colonel Jae-sung-baek. His mission was simple but nearly impossible. Get aboard the star render and sabotage it from within. The boarding pods crashed into the station's hull, cutting through with plasma torches. Hawk's teams poured into the corridors, weapons ready. They met immediate resistance from Council security forces. The fighting inside the star render was brutal. Close quarters combat, the kind of warfare humans had perfected over millennia. Beck's soldiers moved with lethal efficiency, clearing corridors and pushing toward the reactor core. Dr. Haewon said we need to overload the cooling system, Beck said, checking his tactical display. That will force them to shut down the weapon or risk catastrophic failure. His team fought their way deeper into the station. Council guards died trying to stop them. Human soldiers fell, sacrificing themselves to buy time for their comrades to advance. Outside, Admiral Choi watched the main battle develop. Her forces were holding, but barely. She had lost over 200 ships. The Council had lost more, but they could afford the losses. She could not, Admiral. Captain Kim reports the boarding teams have reached the star render's reactor level, her aide said. Good. Tell him to make ready for Phase 3. Captain Dae-hyun moved the Indomitable into position. His ship carried a weapon that Dr. Haewon had designed specifically for this battle. An electromagnetic pulse generator, scaled up to massive proportions. It would disable every electronic system within its range. Friend and foe alike. Engineering, prepare the pulse weapon, Dae-hyun ordered. Sir, firing it will disable our own systems as well. I know. We will be dead in the water, but so will the Council fleet in this sector, and our people know it is coming. They can prepare. Inside the star render, Baek's team reached the cooling control room. They were down to 30 soldiers from the original 100. But they had made it. Plant the charges, Baek ordered. When this goes, the reactor will overheat. They will have to vent it or the whole station explodes. His demo expert set the explosives with practiced hands. 30 seconds. Everyone out. Move, the team ran. Behind them, the charges detonated, destroying the cooling systems. Alarms began to wail throughout the station. On the command deck, technicians shouted in panic. Reactor overheating. Cooling failure. We must vent or we will have a meltdown. Vexthara's face showed her shock. How did they get aboard? High Counselor, we must decide now. Vent the reactor or lose the station. She had no choice. Vent it. Emergency shutdown. The star render's weapon powered down, its deadly charge dissipating harmlessly. 3 days of charging wasted. And worse, the station was now vulnerable. "Now, Captain Kim," Admiral Choi transmitted. Daehyun activated the pulse weapon. A wave of electromagnetic energy exploded outward from the Indomitable, washing over hundreds of Council ships. Systems failed. Shields dropped. Engines went dark. The Indomitable went dark as well, but human ships farther from the pulse were prepared. They had shielded their critical systems. They had trained for this exact scenario. Within minutes, they were recovering and beginning to maneuver again. The Council fleet, unprepared and unshielded, drifted helplessly. "All ships, target the disabled vessels," Choi ordered. "Disabled, do not destroy if possible. We are offering them the chance to surrender." The battle turned into a rout. Council ships, unable to fight back, began sending surrender signals. Those that could still move tried to retreat, but human forces pursued them relentlessly. On the star render, Vexithara realized the truth. They had lost. The humans, outnumbered and outgunned, had defeated them through tactics, courage, and sheer determination. "Signal the fleet," she said quietly. "All forces, stand down. We surrender." The words felt like poison, but she said them anyway. The war was over. Captain Daehyun's crew worked frantically to restore the Indomitable's systems. Around them, the battle was ending. Council ships that had terrorized human space for months now sat silent and defeated. Admiral Choi allowed herself a moment of relief before opening a fleet-wide channel. "All forces cease fire. Accept all surrenders. 10 to wounded, ours and theirs. The war is over." She looked at the tactical display showing the cost. 320 human ships destroyed. Thousands of casualties. The Council had lost over 900 ships with hundreds more disabled. Both sides had bled. But only one side had proven willing to do whatever it took to survive. On the Council station, Myrthos watched the reports come in. He felt no satisfaction, only sadness. This war should never have happened. But perhaps from this tragedy something better could emerge. He sent a message to Ambassador Ji-won Park. "The Council wishes to discuss terms for peace. Real peace this time, not domination. Will humanity negotiate?" Ji-won read the message and smiled grimly. "Tell them yes. We never wanted war, but we will negotiate as equals, not as subjects." The response came quickly. Agreed, the war had ended. But its effects would reshape the galaxy forever. First contact with human warfare fleet. Admiral Jin Young-song stood on the bridge of his command ship, the Defiant, watching the enemy fleet approach. 300 ships appeared on the tactical display, advancing in perfect formation toward the Helios system. His own fleet numbered 47 vessels, positioned in a defensive sphere around the colony world below. "They outnumber us 6-1, his tactical officer said unnecessarily. "Yes," Jin Young replied, "but they have never fought humans before. That gives us an advantage they cannot calculate." Grand Marshal Zethkul commanded the Council armada from his flagship, a massive dreadnought called the Eternal Glory. He reviewed the tactical situation with satisfaction. The humans had evacuated most civilians from the Helios colony, but they stubbornly refused to abandon the planet. Very well. He would destroy their fleet, then occupy the world. It would be a quick demonstration of Council superiority. "All ships maintain formation," Zethkul ordered. "We advance as planned. When we reach weapons range, we will overwhelm them with concentrated fire." His fleet moved forward in neat rows exactly as their tactical doctrine prescribed. It was the same formation they had used for centuries. Why change what worked? Jin Young watched them come and smiled. Just like the simulations. They think formation equals strength. They are about to learn differently. "All ships execute pattern Delta 7. The human fleet suddenly broke apart. Ships scattered in what appeared to be chaos, abandoning their defensive positions. To the Council forces it looked like panic. "They run already," Zethkul said with contempt. "All ships pursue and engage." That was the mistake Jin Young had been waiting for. The moment the Council fleet broke formation to chase individual human ships, they lost their concentrated firepower advantage. "Spring the trap," Jin Young ordered. Hidden among the asteroids at the edge of the system, Captain Yeon Soo-han and her fighter squadron waited. They piloted small, fast craft that the Council sensors had dismissed as debris. Now they activated their engines and dove toward the enemy fleet's exposed rear. Yeon-soo led her squadron through the confusion, targeting the Council ship's engine sections. Her fighters were equipped with weapons the Council had not anticipated. Humans called them fire-and-forget missiles, small smart weapons that did not need constant guidance. Each fighter carried 20 of them. All wings weapons-free, Yansu transmitted. Make every shot count. 200 fighters emptied their missile racks in less than a minute. 4,000 missiles swarmed toward the Council fleet. The enemy ship's defenses were designed to stop large projectiles from capital ships, not swarms of small, maneuverable weapons. Explosions blossomed across the Council formation. 17 ships lost power as their engines were crippled. 3 more suffered critical damage and began venting atmosphere. What is happening? Zethkul demanded. Where did those fighters come from? They were hiding, Marshal. Our sensors did not detect them. Then fix our sensors and destroy them. But the fighters were already gone, retreating at maximum speed. And the chaos was just beginning. Jin Young's capital ships, which had seemed to be fleeing, suddenly reversed course. They had drawn portions of the Council fleet away from the main formation. Now they turned and engaged at close range, where the human weapons were most effective. Lieutenant Mira Shin sat at her communication station aboard the Defiant. She had a special assignment that Jin Young had personally approved. As the battle began, she opened a broadcast channel that every Council ship could hear. This is the human fleet, Mira announced. You have come to drive us from our homes. You think we are weak because we are young. Let me tell you what you face. We are the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We are the species that split the atom and walked on our moon. We are the species that looked at weapons that could destroy our world and chose peace instead. But make no mistake, we remember how to fight. We remember how to win, and we will not surrender. Then she began playing music, old songs from Earth's history, battle hymns and war chants from a dozen cultures. The Council crews heard sounds they did not understand, filled with aggression and defiance. The psychological impact was immediate. The Council forces had expected a quick victory. Instead, they found themselves in a chaotic, brutal fight against an enemy that refused to behave according to proper military doctrine. Jin Young pressed his advantage. Deploy the hammer drones, another surprise for the Council. Unmanned ships appeared from behind the colony world's moon. These were simple vessels, little more than engines and explosives. They had one purpose, to ram Council ships at maximum speed. They are using suicide attacks, a Council officer shouted. The drones were not piloted by living beings, but the Council forces did not know that. They saw ships accelerating toward them with no attempt to slow down or evade, and they began to question what kind of enemy would sacrifice themselves so readily. Zethkul tried to rally his fleet. All ships reform on me. Concentrate fire on their command vessel. But reforming was easier said than done. Human ships kept darting in and out of formation, firing from unexpected angles using tactics that seemed random, but were actually carefully coordinated chaos. The battle raged for 6 hours. The humans lost 12 ships, their crews fighting until their vessels could no longer function. But the Council losses were catastrophic. 156 ships destroyed or disabled. Another 70 suffered significant damage. Finally, Zethkul gave the order he never thought he would need to give. All ships, retreat, fall back to Rally Point Sigma. The Council fleet withdrew, limping away from Helios system. On the Defiance bridge, Jin Young allowed himself to breathe. They had won, but the cost had been high. 12 ships, nearly 3,000 crew members dead or wounded. Send a message to Admiral Choi, he said quietly. Tell her Helios holds. Tell her we bloodied them. And tell her this is just the beginning. Across the galaxy, news of the battle spread rapidly. The Council, which had ruled unchallenged for millennia, had been defeated. By humans. The supposedly primitive, weak humans. On the Council station, Vexthara watched the reports in disbelief. How did they do this? Myrthos, who had warned her, provided the answer. Because they fight differently than we do. We fight to win. They fight to survive. There is a difference. General Thalvin slammed his armored fist on a table. This is unacceptable. We must launch a larger attack. We must show strength. Or, Myrthos said carefully, we could reconsider this war before more die. But Vexithera's pride would not allow it. No, we will crush them. Prepare a second offensive. This time we hold nothing back. In human space, celebrations were brief. Admiral Choi knew this was only the first engagement. The Council would come again in greater numbers and with greater fury. Begin Phase 2 operations, she ordered Colonel Kang. I want your teams hitting their supply lines. I want them to know that nowhere is safe. We hurt them at Helios. Now we make them afraid." Kang smiled. "With pleasure, Admiral." The first battle was over. The humans had proven they could fight. Now they would prove they could win a war. And the galaxy would learn why humanity had survived so long despite being at war with itself. They were very, very good at it. The history they didn't know, Admiral Bora Choi received the Council's declaration in her office on Mars. She read it twice, her face expressionless. Then she pressed a button on her desk. "Activate Protocol Omega. All fleets to defensive positions. Recall all personnel on leave. This is not a drill." Across human space, alarms began to sound. Ships that had been on patrol missions turned toward their assigned defensive zones. Military bases that had been quiet suddenly filled with activity. Soldiers who had been sleeping were pulled from their bunks. Within 6 hours, every human military asset was moving into position. The Galactic Council had expected panic. They had expected desperate negotiations. They got neither. On the station orbiting Concordia Prime, Counselor Murthos sat in his private chambers studying. He was a scholar before he was a politician, and something about the human response troubled him. They had shown no fear. Captain Kim had spoken with such confidence. Why? Murthos accessed the galactic database and began researching humanity. The official files were brief. Humans had been discovered 200 cycles ago when they sent their first faster-than-light ship beyond their home system. They were carbon-based, relatively fragile physically, and technologically behind most galactic species. They had been granted minor membership status in 5 systems to colonize, but Murthos dug deeper. He accessed the reports filed by the first contact teams. He read the cultural assessments, and slowly, a picture began to form that disturbed him greatly. Humans had a concept called war that they had practiced for their entire recorded history. Not occasional conflicts, not border disputes. Continuous, brutal, creative warfare spanning 10,000 years. They had fought with stones, then with metal, then with explosives, and finally with weapons that could destroy their entire planet. Murthos read about something called the World Wars, conflicts that had killed millions. He read about nuclear weapons, bombs so powerful that 2 of them had vaporized entire cities. The humans had built thousands of these weapons and pointed them at each other for decades. The counselor felt his blood run cold. The galactic species had largely evolved past warfare millennia ago. They had disputes, certainly, but nothing like what humans had done to themselves, and humanity had survived it all. Meanwhile, in the Human Defense Command Center on Earth, Dr. Sungmin Lee stood before a holographic display, briefing Admiral Choi and her senior staff. "The council species are old," he explained, manipulating the display to show various alien profiles. Most of them achieved spaceflight over 5,000 years ago. They have not fought a serious war in living memory. Their conflicts are political, economic, or very limited in scope. So they are soft, Colonel Hyun-Woo Kang said. He commanded the Special Operations Division. "Not exactly," Dr. Lee replied. "They are experienced and organized. Their technology is superior to ours in many ways, but they think of war as a chess game. Formal, structured. They have rules. And we do not," Admiral Choi said quietly. "We have rules," Dr. Lee corrected. "But our rules were written in blood over thousands of years of conflict. We understand total war. We understand asymmetric warfare. We understand that survival sometimes requires terrible choices." Colonel Kang pulled up a star map. "What about their fleet composition?" "Standard line formations," Admiral Choi answered. "Large capital ships supported by cruisers and fighters. They rely on shields and armor. Their tactics are predictable because they have not needed to innovate in centuries." "And our tactics?" Kang asked. Admiral Choi smiled. "We use everything we have ever learned. From every war we have ever fought, we hit them where they are weak. We move faster than they expect. We make them afraid." On the council station, Murthos continued his research. He discovered something that made him immediately request an emergency meeting with High Counselor Vexit Thara. "You must see this," Murthos said, projecting historical data. "The humans have a saying, peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of overwhelming force. They unified their entire planet not through cooperation, but through mutually assured destruction." Vex Thara studied the information. "They are barbaric." "No," Murthos said. "They are survivors. Every species they show us has been through hardship, but nothing like humanity. They evolved as persistence hunters, chasing prey until it died of exhaustion. Their entire biology is built for endurance, and their culture reflects this. They do not give up. Then they will die stubbornly, General Thalvin said, entering the room. I have ordered a warning strike. We will destroy one of their mining stations in the outer territories. It will show them we are serious. That may be a mistake, Mirthos warned. Nonsense. They need to understand that we have power. 3 rotations later, the Council fleet destroyed an automated mining platform in the Kepler system. It was a small target, unmanned, and far from any population centers. The attack was meant to demonstrate capability without causing casualties. The human response came within hours. Admiral Choi held a press conference that was broadcast across the galaxy. The Galactic Council has fired the first shot, she said calmly. They destroyed an unmanned facility worth approximately 3 million credits. In response, we are moving all military forces to full combat readiness. We will defend our colonies with every resource at our disposal. We do not seek war, but we will not run from it either. Back on Earth, Colonel Kang was already deploying his special operations teams. They moved silently through space using small, fast ships that were hard to detect. Their mission was not to attack, but to observe. They positioned themselves near Council supply lines, military bases, and communications hubs. They watched and they learned. Dr. Lee prepared another briefing, this time for dissemination to Council species through back channels. He wanted them to understand what they were facing. The document contained a simple timeline of human warfare. 10,000 years ago, humans fought with spears and arrows. 5,000 years ago, they fought with swords and siege weapons. 1,000 years ago, they fought with gunpowder and cannons. 200 years ago, they fought with machine guns and tanks. 100 years ago, they developed nuclear weapons. 50 years ago, they developed weapons that could exterminate all life on their planet, and they chose not to use them. The document concluded with a simple statement. Humanity has never lost a war of survival. They have lost battles. They have suffered defeats, but when their existence is threatened, they find a way to endure. Mirthos read the document in his chambers. He immediately sent a message to Vex Ithara urging caution, but the High Counselor was unmoved. They want us to fear them, she said. It is psychological warfare. We have the numbers. We have the technology. We will prevail. Admiral Choi stood on the bridge of her flagship, the Indomitable. Around her, crew members worked efficiently, preparing for the coming battle. She thought about her grandfather, who had fought in the last major war before humanity united. He had told her stories about what people would do when everything was at stake. Admiral, her communications officer said, intelligence reports the Council is massing a fleet. They are targeting the Helios system. How many ships? Preliminary count suggests 300 vessels. The bridge fell silent. 300 ships against the 47 they had stationed at Helios. The numbers were impossible. Send a message to Fleet Admiral Song at Helios, Bora said. Tell him the Council is coming. Tell him to prepare for engagement. And tell him something else. What, Admiral? Tell him to make them regret this decision. Tell him to show them what humans can do. The officer nodded and transmitted the message. Across human space, forces began moving into position. They did not have the numbers. They did not have the technology. But they had something the Council had forgotten how to use. They had the will to fight and the knowledge of how to win against impossible odds. The Declaration. The chamber was massive, built to hold representatives from 12 different species. Each delegate sat in their designated section, arranged in a perfect circle around the central platform. Above them, stars shone through the transparent dome, a reminder that they governed the galaxy together. Captain Dae-hyun Kim stood beside Ambassador Ji-won Park, watching the proceedings with careful eyes. He wore his dress uniform, dark blue with silver trim, and carried no weapons. The Galactic Council did not allow arms in their sacred chamber. Ji-won adjusted her diplomatic robes, her face calm despite the tension in the air. High Counselor Vex Ithara rose from her seat. She was tall, nearly 8 feet, with purple skin that shimmered under the lights. Her 4 eyes swept across the chamber before settling on the human delegation. We call this emergency session to order, Vex Ithara announced, her voice amplified throughout the space. The matter before us concerns the human expansion into restricted territories. Ji-won stepped forward onto the speaking platform. Honored Council, we come in peace to discuss these concerns. The colonies in question were established on uninhabited worlds. We conducted full surveys before settlement. No species claim these systems. A rumble of disagreement echoed through the chamber. General Thalvin, commander of the Vraxian military forces, stood abruptly. His species resembled massive crustaceans covered in thick armor plating. The humans ignore our warnings. They spread like infection. They build where they should not build. We followed all protocols, Jiwan replied firmly. We submitted colonization requests. We waited the required 3 cycles. When no objections were filed, we proceeded legally. Legal? Vexithara's voice carried ice. You arrived in our galaxy barely 200 cycles ago. You were given a handful of systems as charity. Now you occupy 47 worlds. Your breeding rate is unprecedented. Your resource consumption is alarming. Daehyun felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. He had studied the Galactic Council extensively. They were old, comfortable, and arrogant. They had ruled for thousands of years without serious challenge. Humanity was young, hungry, and growing fast. That scared them. We only take what we need to survive, Jiwan said. Our population grows because we are a young species. In time, our growth will stabilize. We are not your enemy. That is not for you to decide, Vexthara declared. She looked around the chamber. Council members, you have reviewed the evidence. The humans have violated the spirit of our agreements. They expand too quickly. They refuse to acknowledge our authority over territorial boundaries. What say you? One by one, the representatives activated their voting crystals. Red lights appeared above each delegation. 12 votes. All against humanity. 0 votes in their favor. Daehyun felt Jiwan tense beside him. She had expected this, but seeing it made real was different. The vote is unanimous, Vexthara announced. The Galactic Council hereby declares that humanity has violated interstellar law. You are ordered to evacuate 17 colony worlds immediately. You will return to your home system and the 5 worlds originally granted to you. You have 30 planetary rotations to comply. And if we refuse? Daehyun asked quietly. The chamber fell silent. Vexithara turned her attention to the captain. Then we will enforce compliance through military action. You would go to war over this? Jiwan asked, disbelief in her voice. We prefer not to call it war, General Talvin said. Your species is small, young. We expect you will see reason and withdraw peacefully. If not, we will remove you from contested territories by force. Your ships are primitive. Your weapons are basic. Resistance would be pointless. Daehyun looked at the general for a long moment. He thought about Earth's history. He thought about the wars that had shaped humanity. The world wars, the nuclear standoffs. The century of conflicts that had finally united his species. He thought about how humanity had learned to fight not because they wanted to, but because survival demanded it. Is that all? Daehyun asked. The chamber erupted in confused murmuring. Vexthara's 4 eyes narrowed. Explain yourself, Captain. You said you would use military force. You said our resistance would be pointless. I am asking if that is all. Is that your complete threat? General Talvin's armored plates shifted, a sign of agitation among his species. You dare mock this council? I am not mocking anyone, Daehyun replied calmly. I am trying to understand the scope of what you are proposing. You want us to abandon our homes. You want us to leave 17 worlds where millions of humans have built lives. You want us to cram back into 5 systems that cannot support our population. And when we refuse, you will attack us. I simply want to know if that is everything you plan to do. You speak as if you have a choice, Vexithara said coldly. We command fleets that number in the thousands. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have fought wars for longer than your species has existed. You have nothing that can stand against us. Jiwan placed a hand on Daehyun's arm, a warning to be careful. But the captain continued, his voice steady and clear. Then I suppose we will find out if you are right. The council chamber exploded with angry voices. Representatives shouted in a dozen languages. Vexithara raised her hand and the noise died down. You refuse our lawful order? We refuse to abandon our people, Daehyun said. If you choose to attack us, that is your decision. But we will not leave our colonies defenseless. We will not surrender without cause. This is madness, another counselor said. Your entire military force is less than 100 ships. We could deploy 1,000 against you tomorrow. You would be destroyed in days. Daehyun smiled, though there was no humor in it. Perhaps. Or perhaps you do not know humans as well as you think you do. Vexithara stood to her full height. Then hear this, humans. We give you 10 rotations to reconsider. After that, We will begin operations to reclaim the contested territories. We will start with your colony in the Helios system. It will serve as an example. Consider carefully whether pride is worth the lives of your people." Jiwan bowed formally. "We will convey your message to our government." As they turned to leave, General Talvin called out, "Captain Kim, you seem very confident for someone whose species faces extinction." "Why?" Daehyun paused at the chamber entrance. He looked back at the assembled council, at their ancient faces and their comfortable certainty. They had never met a species like humanity. They had never fought an enemy that had spent 10,000 years fighting itself. "Because, General, you have just made a terrible mistake. You have given humans something we are very, very good at responding to. You have given us a threat to our survival. And when humanity is threatened, we do not surrender. We fight, we adapt, we endure. You think you know what war is. You have no idea what is coming." He left the chamber with Jiwan beside him. Behind them, the council sat in stunned silence, uncertain if they had just heard bravado or prophecy. In 10 rotations, they would learn the answer. The war had begun,